More than 30 years ago, Microsoft revolutionized the tech industry with its groundbreaking Windows operating system. Today, we feel we're on the cusp of a new revolutionary technology. But before we go into where we want to go, let's start with where we are right now. So, 2017 was a really positive year for Microsoft. We had extraordinary numbers. Revenues reached $89.5 billion, a 5.43% increase from the previous year. Operating income was $22.33 billion, up by 11%. Gross margin also increased by 6%, reaching $55.69 billion. These positive numbers allowed us to employ over 124,000 people worldwide and allow us to operate subsidiaries in 109 countries, positioning us as the 5th largest technology company in the world. Now, what's driving this success? Well, basically we have 3 major business units that are helping us reach these extraordinary numbers. And we segmented it into 3 categories: personal computing, business and productivity, and intelligent cloud. As for personal computing, it's composed of our Windows operating system, as well as our devices such as Surface Pro and Windows Phone, and the Xbox gaming console. As you can see, with $38.7 billion, it's our largest source of revenue. It composes 43.1% of our total revenue. However, year-over-year growth is negative 4%, which means that this segment is on the decline. However, since we have really good capabilities in this area, we were able to increase in operating income by 34%.
In addition to personal computing, we at Microsoft also offer a range of products focused on business and productivity services. These include commercial and consumer licenses for our Office 365 products, as well as our recent acquisition of LinkedIn and our Dynamics Enterprise Services business line. Now, as you can also see, in addition to personal computing, the second largest business productivity is the second largest contributor to our annual revenue, and it has also seen a 15% growth rate over the last year.
And finally, our last and most important product going forward is the Microsoft Azure Intelligent Cloud Division. So Azure comprises all of Microsoft's enterprise and consumer-focused cloud products, which, for those of you who aren't aware, cloud involves renting out server space online rather than owning your own personal server or private enterprise server. So Microsoft Cloud is incredibly important for the company going forward. There are incredible opportunities in the space, and as you can see, it is our 3rd segment in terms of revenue, but is highly promising in terms of operating income despite its recent decline due to our massive investment in the business unit. So just to clarify, Microsoft Cloud is not one homogeneous unit. It is broken down into 3 important segments, just as all cloud services are broken down. The first is the most basic. It is infrastructure as a service. So this is the stereotypical image of cloud computing. Instead of storing your data on a server in your business or home, you contract out your data storage and computing needs to a cloud provider like Microsoft. So Microsoft or competitors in the space would provide the infrastructure that allows you to run your processes. And it's important to note that this is a massive sector in the cloud industry with a $44 billion market, and it's growing incredibly quickly, faster than all the other 2 segments. However, Microsoft is not the leading player in infrastructure as a service. That title belongs to Amazon Web Services, which invented the service in 2006 when it brought cloud computing to the market and continues to dominate the market. Amazon Web Services dominates both the infrastructure as a service and platform as a service spaces and commands incredibly high operating margins due to its early investments in the space and continued economies of scale. Now, the platform as a service section of cloud is the smallest of the 3, but is still growing quite quickly alongside the rest of the cloud. And to understand platform as a service, it's a bit difficult to conceptualize just because it is not a traditional function. But platform as a service allows companies to develop their own enterprise applications without owning the underlying infrastructure and software to do so. So instead of just renting out a server, companies like Amazon and Microsoft as well, which is a major player in the platform as a service space, rent out space to develop applications and give developers in enterprises the tools to do so. So this segment is a key bridge between the infrastructure as a service and the software as a service ends of the cloud computing spectrum. And that brings us to the final pillar of cloud computing, which is the iconic software as a service. This is what most of us use on a day-to-day basis. We rent software online, paying a license fee, to allow us to run programs that are not, we don't develop ourselves, we don't own ourselves, and allow companies to have incredible capabilities without making the software themselves. So Amazon, notably, is not a major player in this software as a service space. Microsoft is a giant, largely due to the success of its traditionally productivity-based solutions like Microsoft Office, PowerPoint, and the rest of the Office 365 suite. However, there are other major competitors. Salesforce is the traditional software as a service giant, alongside IBM, which has a significant software as a service wing of its cloud computing division. And because software as a service is the largest market, there are a myriad of other smaller competitors carving out niches for themselves in the space as well.
Now we at Microsoft divide our business units based off of the types of products, but who exactly are our customers? Of our 89.9 billion 2017 revenue, they can be divided into four general groups of customers who have various different needs that need to be met through productivity, through personal computing, and through cloud. So the first would be private consumers who primarily buy Windows operating system devices, as well as consumer licenses of our services such as Microsoft Office 365. We have small businesses who primarily get their licenses for these same operating systems on a commercial basis, but typically in an out-of-the-box or through an official equipment manufacturing type distribution channel. We have large corporates who we have direct licensing agreements with, as well as certain types of custom enterprise services agreements, as well as government and academic institutions that also have their own specific needs that need to be met. Now, as we can see, we face a complex competitive environment across all three of these business units. On the one hand, Microsoft still remains the dominant PC and laptop operating system, but increasingly that is a dying market as people are moving more towards tablets, phones, and other types of mobile computing devices, which our Microsoft phone, our Windows phone, as well as our Surface Pro make up a very small percentage of. Similarly, there's strong competition in the personal consumption connected home market by companies like Amazon and Google, as well as in our gaming segment versus large companies like Sony and Nintendo. Now, in the business productivity space, general software companies like Apple and Google are increasingly trying to challenge our market share within the productivity space, as well as facing competition against small, specialized productivity competitors such as Oracle and SAP. In addition, certain hardware manufacturers are increasingly moving upstream with their own form of custom specialized productivity equipment and services. Lastly, in the intelligent cloud, as Adam noted, we are fighting to gain market share against the dominant player, which is Amazon Web Services, and we're competing for second place with IBM. And at the same time, we increasingly are facing a challenge that everything is the cloud. All services that we have across all business units are intimately related to the growth in the cloud market as people have expectations for interoperability and ability to access their data across numerous different devices.
So as the technological world moves from hardware to cloud, what specifically is Microsoft's position and what are the challenges? So from a financial perspective especially, Microsoft is still dependent on its legacy businesses. This is the personal computing, the software licensing for personal computers, and productivity software that is not necessarily natively cloud. So historically, this personal computing segment has comprised the majority of revenue, but as we've shown, that revenue is declining and we expect it to continue declining in the future as the market matures and business moves to the cloud. Moreover, the sales of hardware licenses and other personal computing products traditionally have very high margins, because the software is easily replicated and there are essentially no marginal costs for producing one more unit of software for personal consumption. However, the cloud does not have these same precise economies of scale, and the majority of Microsoft's operating revenue, 56%, still comes from non-cloud business units. And finally, it's just important to keep in perspective, the overall market for private hardware is barely growing. It has only just returned to marginal growth, and prospects for future growth are not promising. This very dark vision contrasts with the incredibly bright future that we see and that the world sees in cloud computing and cloud-enabled services. So as we mentioned, Microsoft's cloud computing division is not focused on necessarily one of the three pillars of cloud computing, but spread between the three, which is something that no other competitor can claim to have. Now, the Microsoft Azure Cloud Computing business unit, it was not traditionally a large part of our revenue, but Microsoft has invested heavily in the service, and due to that investment and overall market growth, the unit grew 99% in 2017. This is incredible growth, but we need to keep growing in order to compete with the 1,000-pound gorilla, which is Amazon Web Services. And just to keep in perspective, the total market for cloud computing is expected to grow at 13% annually, and specific segments, as we mentioned earlier, are expected to grow even faster than that. This is a massive opportunity, and we believe we need a strategy to succeed in the cloud. So what does that strategy look like? Well, we believe that one key trend to be aware of is the shift towards regulation of cloud computing and personal data management. And Microsoft is incredibly well positioned in the cloud computing market to sell a compliance product that allows enterprises to both have the benefits of the cloud without paying the cost of complying with stringent regulatory requirements protecting user data. So what exactly does data privacy compliance as a service look like? That's very difficult to conceptualize, and we believe that the prime example that we need to be aware of is the European General Data Protection Regulation. So this is the first major piece of regulation to come out of a large developed technology market regulating the use of data and the needs for both data processors and data controllers to comply with regulations. So while it is the first, we do not believe it is the only data regulation that's coming to market. As you can see in recent congressional testimony in the US and ongoing movements in emerging markets like Brazil and India, there is a strong global desire to regulate the large tech companies. This may seem like a risk for Microsoft, but we believe that it is a potential opportunity and potentially could protect Microsoft businesses because, as we all know, increased regulation protects incumbents, and Microsoft is most definitely an incumbent. Increased regulation would raise the barriers to entry. But it also has the benefit of encouraging private companies to outsource their data management. Right now, many companies use only the infrastructure as a service aspect of cloud computing, but we believe that with the new regulatory requirements, as represented by the GDPR in Europe, many companies don't have the capability to comply with these new laws and don't want to face the stiff fines that will surely be imposed on them if they accidentally breach these new regulations. And as you can see on the slide, 60% of companies in the EU are not prepared to comply with the GDPR. That is a massive number. Again, from a macroeconomic perspective, these regulations might not be the best thing to encourage innovation, but from Microsoft's perspective, it's an incredible opportunity to swoop into the market and take over this data management from companies that are not prepared. Specifically, small and medium businesses are those least prepared because they don't have the revenues to pay massive tech teams to manage their data, and this small and medium business market alone is worth $18.9 billion in cloud computing revenue in the EU, and that's at the current market, not any sort of projected growth rate. So what exactly does a data compliance product look like? Well, for that, it's important to understand the exact duties of companies. One of the most controversial and most well-known is the right to be forgotten, which is enshrined in Article 17 of the GDPR. This requires all companies that touch private user data to have the capability to delete that user data completely from their systems upon the request of the user. Now, this may seem straightforward, and as a user, you expect companies to be able to do this, but technically, it's incredibly difficult to locate that data, wipe it from your systems, and make sure you're only deleting that single user's data. And it's incredibly hard to locate that single user data because data is not just stored in one place. Data is spread around the world because it's on the cloud in different servers and on different continents. Moreover, that data can then be replicated and reviewed for maintenance purposes, to maintain the integrity of data, for training algorithms and other services. So from a technical perspective, especially small and medium businesses do not have the capabilities to go in and manage this data. Now, the data processors, the cloud providers like Microsoft, Amazon, and others, all have the capability to find this data and have recently declared that they are compliant with the GDPR in their ability to go in and find this data and delete it. However, there's a large difference between simple compliance, as Amazon proposes, and what we're proposing, which is that Microsoft make compliance easy to use and straightforward. So right now, if I am a small, medium business using Amazon's infrastructure as a service platform, they have the technical capability to find and delete that user data, but I have to do a lot of the management on my end to find the data, make sure it's linked to the other user, and make sure that my systems can handle that deletion of user data. Microsoft can automate that process, make it easier for the company to simply say delete user data, and all the back-end work is done by Microsoft. And moreover, the company has the machine learning and artificial intelligence expertise to make this process incredibly efficient and almost completely automated. So, we've gone into this a little, but how does Microsoft line up against other competitors in the market for data privacy? Well, number one, Microsoft has existing software as a service client relationships. Data management is most definitely a software as a service product, and Microsoft has the leading software as a service application, Microsoft, the productivity suite, which they call Microsoft 365, and has the relationships with both major and medium-sized clients around the world built on decades of trust and mutual cooperation. Moreover, Microsoft has been a leader in complying with government regulation, as it has a somewhat tense relationship with the US government, but has worked with them to pass acts such as the Cloud Act in the US, and has worked with the EU to protect user data, and notably in comparison to other companies like Google that have a very hostile relationship with several EU regulators, Microsoft is seen as a much more government-friendly brand. Finally, Microsoft, importantly, can offer the software as a service, but also the platform as a service and infrastructure as a service capabilities, making compliance an integrated product. Other companies can offer one or two parts of the cloud stack, but Microsoft has the capability to go offer a privacy product to one client and also sell them the platform as a service and infrastructure as a service capabilities as additional products, which is a very common technique in the enterprise software space. And I believe this is an incredible opportunity for Microsoft to sell its other products as well. Now, not all is, data privacy is not an easy market for Microsoft because one, it has very low operating margins for Azure. And while we believe we can create a data privacy product, the privacy product itself will never be as profitable as simple hardware sales. This reflects the relatively low operating margins for Azure already. We believe that selling both the data privacy products and the rest of Microsoft's cloud stack is an opportunity to increase margins, but again, it's difficult to replicate the incredibly high margins of pure hardware and license sales. Moreover, Microsoft business units are currently designed to focus on product type rather than the overall market, which would need to change if Microsoft's proposes a data privacy compliance strategy. However, the opportunities are incredible, as we've mentioned. As we've shown, the companies throughout the EU and the world, for that matter, lack the internal capabilities to comply with these regulations. Again, Microsoft can swoop into that market and pick up all this new business that is suddenly created by these very stringent regulations. Moreover, we believe that there's a potential to finally create a profitable productized solution because regulations like the GDPR make all companies in the world do the same services. Microsoft can create one product for an entire market like the EU. Now, when it goes into a company, it has to create customized solutions, a compliance solution. Every company has to do the same thing, so it can be one product for everyone. And as we've mentioned before, this also enables Microsoft to essentially open the door in a variety of companies and sell down the cloud stack to the infrastructure as a service and platform as a service capabilities that are highly profitable. Then lastly, the threats. Number one, there's no talking about cloud without mentioning AWS. AWS dominates the infrastructure as a service space, but we believe that privacy solutions are a way to attack their dominance in that infrastructure as a service. Moreover, as we mentioned before, cloud services have lower margins, but we believe that data privacy is a potential solution to this low margin and could create a more profitable business model in the cloud. And finally, this is a threat in all aspects of the cloud, but there are always specialized competitors such as Slack, who's taken a chunk out of Microsoft productivity market, and Google, who's not necessarily specialized, but has very niche products that could potentially carve out profitable chunks of Microsoft's very broad cloud business.
Now, how would we go about doing this? How would we go about developing a data privacy strategy for Microsoft? As we see it, there are three core pillars that we would need to implement in order to achieve this new direction for our company. First, we need to develop an engineering solution that requires that we expand upon our current products that are tools for finding data to develop a suite of privacy as a product tools. And those need to be integrated with our existing Microsoft Cloud services to provide a comprehensive package so that, as we said, we can provide the privacy compliance component as well as downsell the rest of the stack. We also would suggest that we should look into incorporating these tools as features of all of our other product lines to make sure that we have secure Office 365, secure Windows OS. All these things should be focused on incorporating data privacy components into all of our product lines as a feature. And in addition, we should try to invest into new and innovative ways, especially using emergent technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning to deliver these privacy solutions and leveraging our size and our resources to provide the best possible service at the lowest cost to us. Now, the second part of this would be, how do we market this? We need to make sure that we use our advantage as the dominant player in our current relationships with many of our clients to develop a Microsoft brand as the safe computing provider. This would involve commercial advertising, a media blitz, and generally getting the idea out there that Microsoft is the brand where you know your data is safe. We'd also suggest incorporating a sales strategy that focuses on developing incentives for early adoption so that we can get ourselves out there as the dominant first mover player in this privacy as a product cloud position so that we can then move on from there and develop ourselves within the position. And lastly, we think that we should reorganize the company to reorient our current business units to be focused less on specific products and more to reflect the fact that cloud really is everything in our business. One potential way to do this would be to divide it into secure personal to reflect sort of the personal computing aspect of our business, but focusing on the fact that they incorporate aspects of data privacy and data security within that. An out-of-the-box data management suite to focus on those smaller businesses, those businesses that can't maintain those types of direct licensing relationships with us, and then our corporate compliance business, which would focus on a combination of on-site and, most importantly, cloud-based compliance solutions. And we should focus on trying to cut out the redundancies to make sure that we can boost the operating margins within our cloud space.
So just to give some perspective on who else might try to compete in this market for compliance and data management, well, the biggest, perhaps most trusted brand in enterprise cloud outside of Microsoft is IBM. So IBM has a pretty large cloud business, although it's still far smaller than Microsoft business, and it also has the ability to offer hardware solutions that integrate with its cloud side. However, one major weakness of IBM's cloud business is it lacks a definable product. It must send teams onto the sites of large corporations to essentially work there as contractors. Now, this is profitable. IBM Global Business Services is one of the few profitable parts of the company, but IBM does not have the same ability that Microsoft does to sell clearly defined, highly profitable products down the cloud stack in the platform as a service and infrastructure as a service space, and it also does not have the same software as a service product experience. It is instead almost like a large consultancy for corporations. The alternative to IBM is a highly productized software as a service giant that is Salesforce. So Salesforce has $10.5 billion in annual revenue, which is relatively small, but that comes almost entirely from software as a service. Moreover, it is incredibly popular, already has the door open in a lot of Fortune 100 companies, and has ability managing products. However, because it is a smaller competitor, Salesforce doesn't have the ability that Microsoft does to offer integrated solutions for the entire cloud, and for that reason, we believe that Microsoft beats out both IBM and Salesforce. Now, one notable absentee from this list is Amazon Web Services, the massive cloud giant. We believe that Amazon simply cannot compete in this space, one, because they do not have the software as a service experience or client relationships. They don't have any sort of means of opening the door to that software as a service space. And furthermore, they don't have the experience or essentially they don't design their products to facilitate ease of use and software as a service. They are incredibly good at providing platform as a service and infrastructure as a service, but as you can see from their current efforts to comply with GDPR, they focus strictly on allowing companies the technical capability to comply with laws rather than making it easier for them to do so, which is where Microsoft comes in.
So, what does this all mean for Microsoft financially? Well, we identified 3 goals that we want to attain by using data privacy. First, we want to drive data privacy to reach annual revenue growth of 5% per year for the next 5 years. This will reach $115 billion in total annual revenue by 2023. Second, we want to increase revenues from intelligent cloud by 25% in the first year, and then maintain a 10% level every year thereafter. This will allow us to reach $50 billion in revenue from intelligent cloud by 2023 and increase from 30.5% to 43.6% of total. Third and last, we want to increase Intelligent Cloud's operating income by 10% over 5 years. We currently have a very small margin in Intelligent Cloud and our operating income is in negatives, but we hope that by being pioneers in this area, this will allow us to increase our operating income.
And we recognize that this is an unconventional way to go about attacking the cloud space. It's a disruptive strategy, it's an innovative strategy, it's a blue ocean strategy going after a new untapped market that we would be creating as Microsoft, the giant within the tech space. So we'd like to analyze and compare against 2 possible alternative paths that we've identified and recognize how we think that Microsoft is uniquely situated to use the privacy strategy towards growing our space, and how consumer focused and productivity focused are 2 other our strategy paths would likely, while offering some opportunities for success, we would likely face many challenges that would lead to difficulties in those space. So the first one, consumer focus.
The first alternative is consumer product focused. This is basically integrating Microsoft Cloud services into existing consumer products, specifically Internet of Things product. Some examples of products we could integrate Microsoft services into would be consumer convenience products, smart homes, or virtual personal assistants. There's massive potential in this market and it is increasing at astronomical rates. Global IoT market is expected to grow to $457 billion by 2020, compound annual growth rate of 28.5%. And the smart home segment in particular is expected to grow from $31.4 billion to $53.45 billion in 2022. The problem, however, is that there are giant competitors in this area, in particular Amazon Echo, and Google Home. So, which leads us to the SWOT analysis of the consumer-focused products. Strengths. Microsoft has the resources and the size to conduct potentially a product-focused strategy. And we also have brand recognition that will allow us to appeal to consumers. We are leaders in virtual and augmented reality capabilities, as well as in research for AI and technologies. However, there are a number of weaknesses, particularly that we are a late player in the industry. Amazon and Google have a substantial share of the existing market. We have currently a small presence in consumer convenience as well as in smart home innovation technologies. Opportunities, as I mentioned, is a really large market size as well as a really rapidly growing market. It's still at a really immature stage of the product cycle, introduction stage, but when analyzing the threats, it's that there's huge levels of competition, and there are established market leaders that even though there's large growth rates in the market, we feel that we can't really come into this stage and compete successfully.
Now, another potential option would be to go after the corporate productivity space. As we saw, it's the fastest growing in terms of revenue, the productivity and business services aspect of our current business, and it would involve developing new specialized enterprise solutions and corporate productivity products focused on both creating new services for our existing corporate clients as well as reaching new aspects that have never been touched before by productivity services. Things like frontline workstations, point of sale for small businesses and productivity services, consulting and customer relationship management services, and integrating all of these things into the Microsoft Cloud platform. Now, this is obviously a very large market. As you can see, it's over $350 billion industry a year, and the commercial cloud space is over $260 billion a year, and it reflects the fact that there's an increasing demand for interoperability and flexibility. We cannot simply sit on our laurels and go after, we have Office 365, we have the Microsoft Windows operating system. We have to make sure all of these things are integrated with customized and specialized services. However, we face some pretty stiff competition, both in terms of focused competition, like small, adaptive, and customized service providers, such as Oracle and SAP, as well as large, big data firms like the Google, like Alphabet's Google G Suite, which is increasingly trying to leverage the popularity of Google's existing brands, such as Gmail, Google Calendars, etc., to try to come after the Microsoft Office productivity space. Some recent developments that are concerning in this area include the fact that Airbus recently switched all of its workers off of Microsoft Office to the Google Suite, as well as the fact that they're moving strongly into the US government productivity management space. So again, much like the last option, Microsoft has a benefit of brand dominance. We are strong, we have resources, we have size, and we have existing licensing agreements with large corporate partners that could allow us to go after this productivity space. However, we also already have numerous other products in various areas that have nothing to do with corporate productivity, in particular our private consumption aspect of our business. And our business lines are focused currently on product type as opposed to on the types of needs of specific market segments. So while this is an opportunity for a large market that is growing rapidly, we also feel that Microsoft faces serious threats from companies that are both more specialized and also larger than us in order to try to compete for this productivity space. So putting this all together, as we can see, these three options all offer different challenges and different opportunities, and we believe that the best way forward for us at Microsoft is to seize the commanding heights through privacy. The changing face of the industry requires, as I said, greater cloud interoperability, greater flexibility, greater adaptability, and greater innovation within this space. And we can either try to sit on our laurels and say, we are Microsoft, we have Windows operating system, we have Windows or Microsoft 365, and we're going to double down on what we have now. We can try to charge into the trenches and say we're going to compete with smaller companies and bigger companies alike to try to create customized products for people, or we can rise above the fray and seize the commanding heights by developing a new market that does not currently exist for privacy products and use that to leverage our position to secure our current market share in these existing product lines. Based off this, we think the options are clear and that Microsoft should go forward with developing a privacy as a product strategy to dominate the cloud space going forward. And with that, we thank you.